Everybody at this point, particularly if you engage with discourse on media on the internet, has heard the term the male gaze, but I don't think people quite know what it means. I saw a tweet the other day, don't ask me why I still waste my time and brain cells on that hellscape, but it was a reply to a quote tweet reacting to a standard film bro type post about how much he loves cinema, proceeds to list a bunch of contemporary white male directors besides Iñárritu, but he does Hollywood stuff, so whatever. And of course the quote was calling him out on this. Now, one of the replies was saying, "Oh, why does there have to be a woman?" And we'll get to this schmuck soon. But what really set me going was a response saying that to gain a better perspective of film, we need to have a better appreciation of the female gaze. Now, I know what this person was trying to say, and of course they're right, but I don't like that term. Female gaze. I know it's a term that exists, and it is referring to something that does exist, media which explores the world through that female-centric standpoint, but I don't think it's quite... I think the idea of some media having a female gaze somewhat misses the mark of the true intention of the original term male gaze. Also, just to be clear, this is mainly going to be for those who already know that the male gaze is a bad thing. I'd rather not waste time on some of these Earthheads in the replies. Now, the male gaze, as people commonly use it, I've realized, refers primarily to the male's point of view, particularly within the context of the objectification of women. But I don't think people have an appreciation for how powerful that term is. See, there's nothing inherently wrong with the objectification of people or their bodies, because all bodies are objects. The trouble and true power of the male gaze is found in the fact that the society at large is a heteropatriarchal one, where the woman is reduced by default to that objectivity. And I use the word objectivity deliberately because what we consider to be objective, unbiased, neutral by default has the woman and the female body as a prop, an object. The term male gaze, as it was originally coined in the essay Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema by Laura Mulvey, refers particularly to the function of the camera eye in film, and how women are allowed and unallowed to exist in film, which yes, often has to do with the sexualization and general fact that their standpoint is not typically what is focused on, but it does go deeper. Because, see, the concept of the male gaze, though that term is not what is used, is also largely attributed to John Berger and his book and mini documentary series Ways of Seeing, which was released just a few years before Mulvey's essay, where he examines European visual art. And in his episode about women in art, he examines how women in paintings have historically been depicted and the role that the woman is reduced to on the canvas. Something to be seen, something to be looked at, not a living, breathing person. What these original entries suggest is that the very language of Western storytelling is structured to reduce women to an other. When we use the term male gaze, we are not merely talking about a bias in men's points of view. We are talking about the very language of art and storytelling under a patriarchal society. Because even stories taken from a woman's point of view or told by women for women are created within that society, often using the language, not tainted but built from that male gaze. Of course, stories meant for and by women look and feel different from those made by and for men. Look at how they draw shoujo manga compared to shonen manga. Look at Sex and the City compared to Seinfeld. They're the same show, by the way, just that one's made for straight guys and the other is made for the girls and the gays. I'm more willing to listen to a critique of Barbie by someone like Jesse Genda than I am someone like Ben Shapiro. There's another debate on that hellscape of a website some time ago about whether cis hetero male attraction to women is the same as lesbian attraction to women. Both parties like women, right? So is there any difference? In true Twitter fashion, of course, no real conclusion was drawn, but I'll give my take as someone who isn't entirely sure at this point what the hell I am. I think, obviously, yes, there must be a difference. Not that there is some innate difference between men and women, but I think that if you've lived in the world with the body of a woman, there are certain nuances that you're going to understand and perhaps be attracted to in a different way from a man does. Not necessarily that the attraction is stronger per se, but it's different. I mean, for heterosexuals, the whole pitch, the whole selling point, right, is that men and women are supposed to complement each other because they're different and maybe have experienced different things and can find new things in each other. You know, the key has to fit into the lock. But for homosexuals, they have a greater appreciation of the experience of being in the body that they are attracted to, and may just look for different things in them, whether romantically or sexually. The point of this tangent being that yes, men and women's points of view are different and will cast a different lens on how they view the world. But the important thing to remember is that it is because of socialization. It is not a natural difference. Our world treats the people it deems as men and the people it deems as women differently and teaches them different things, which creates different standpoints. But it is, in the end, an image that is constructed. In the episode of Ways of Seeing, there is a very touching segment, the second half, where Berger stops mansplaining and gets a bunch of women to get their take on the whole thing. And many of them expressed the touching sentiment that when they look at themselves, even in a mirror, they see themselves as beings that are seen by others, not necessarily people who exist within themselves, but characters in a large play where they know their parts. I don't know what it's like being a woman in a world of scrutiny where you always have to be thinking about what you wear and how it will affect the men around you. But I do know what it's like to have grown up with internalized oppression. It took me a long time to grow to love my hair. I still feel very self-conscious about the way I talk. I still feel very, very conscious about the race of the characters I draw. Had I started my webcomic The New Butler now instead of years ago when I did, the characters would definitely not all be white. But that is the grammar of the manga and comic books that I was raised on. To deviate from that would have to be a deliberate choice on my part because of what these scholars where I come from call the colonial gaze. It is not mere perspective, it is language. Anything that is said in deviance to that language is considered subversive, non-canon, or scrutinized. Why do you think we call movies made by white men movies, but movies made by and for women are called chick flicks? Movies by black people aren't discussed at all outside of their community, never winning Academy Awards unless it's about oppression in some way. Cartoons made from Japan are called anime, and we come up with all sorts of other words to describe those from other East Asian countries. Non-American films are called world cinema, and non-English language films are called foreign language films. This had said that people simply don't want movies by women because anything made outside of the male gaze is less of a movie. It by default becomes non-mainstream. It becomes political. It becomes woke or just trash. Art made by women for women with female sensibilities are still existing within the framework of this patriarchal male-centric world, and whether consciously or not, must grapple with it. Women have always been the ones to be loved or the damsels in distress, and much fiction made for women with that female-centric standpoint still heavily implement the tropes of romance. Are women just naturally more into romance than men? Or is the construct of what we call women within this patriarchal society socialized to have more of a sensibility for romance? I wish something called the female gaze was possible, but Orange Hitler just became the most powerful person in the world again. The gaze of the male is still the dominant standpoint of how we see these images. Everything that stands in deviance to that gaze is actively existing in conversation with it. The man movies will remain, for now, the first thing people think about when they think of movies, and will always be seen as the more proper movies. Using women's points of view can be an effort in decentering the male gaze, but when the whole perception of woman and femininity was itself created in a patriarchal society, it just won't be that simple. This is why I've always argued for redefining what movies are as a whole, and fundamentally challenging our relationship with the art we make. I think the only way we can properly kill the male gaze is to kill what we currently view movies as, and create a new language entirely, which can only happen by reconstructing the film industry. But the patriarchal society would probably have to go first, which is a big fish. Big fish. As we'll have to roll. So yes, what this person in this tweet is saying is correct. It's just the term is wrong. I think language is important, and we throw around the word gaze too willy-nilly without really understanding the gravity of what it means. So anyways, that's my rant for the day. I hope you were able to get something out of that. If I was being a big patriarchal misogynist who's missing the point, let me know. Subscribe if you like more of this rambling stuff. Join my Patreon so I don't sell out or something.